the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
There we go. We are back up and running. My audio is probably going to be kind of crappy because I'm in Dallas, but that's the way it goes. Hi, Taylor. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? You're also like laying in bed, like
I know.
very relaxed.
I know. I just like, what's the point? Why am I going to get up and go sit in an office? I'm just going to be holding the laptop this way instead of on a desk. So,
That's
anyways,
That's fair.
how's your weekend?
Pretty good. I slept all day yesterday, and then today my family's going to see Planet of the Apes, and I'm jealous, but I couldn't make it because I had to do this. Womp womp.
That would have been
Anyway,
fun.
I know. Happy to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm sure this is so much better than being in the movies.
All right. Well, want me to intro us?
Yes. We
Hello.
decided that you're way better at this than me.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Doomed to Fail. We are the podcast that brings you history's most notorious failures and epic disasters twice a week, every week. I'm Taylor, joined as always by Fars. Hello,
I'm
Fars.
Fars.
And I just got mad at Fars because he wants to talk about the debate, and I just don't think that it's over yet, and I just don't want to talk about it. It's like all I've talked about for the past like 6 days with people, and I'm just like, I can't.
It's going to be a bit of a disappointment for you because I'm going to be discussing presidential debates later.
Oh, perfect. Are you doing Nixon Kennedy?
No.
That's like all people talk about this week.
No, I'm kind of exaggerating only a little bit. I'm really talking about presidential races and the way things have worked out. I'm gonna address one specific campaign, but I'm not gonna spoil it because I think you go first this week.
I do.
There we go.
And I'm going to continue talking about the Olympics. If you log into our Instagram as us, all of our algorithm is just Olympics, and it's very, very fun. There's like trials happening right now. There's divers. There's videos of like divers' parents crying because they're so excited. There's people breaking records. Everyone's really fit. It's very exciting. So everyone's in trials right now, getting ready to go to Paris. I had to buy 2 pairs of new jeans. So I bought new jeans from Old Navy because I don't know. I still feel like that is where I buy jeans. And I bought a Team USA sweatshirt. And then I was like, I have too many sweatshirts. But I was like, I would literally never wear one of those Old Navy 4th of July t-shirts. But I was like, I will 100% wear an Old Navy Team USA sweatshirt for no reason. So that's coming because I'm very Olympic out right now.
Is it in like
Like
100 degrees where you were?
it is, yes. Hmm.
Okay,
But
so you just have
I
to wear
keep it cold in here,
Got it.
cold and expensive in this house.
Got it.
And I don't care. My friend at work, we have like weekly presentations, and sometimes it's about work. It's about like data and the internet or whatever. But then sometimes it's about fun stuff. So I actually did our Able Archer 83 episode on I did it for my work. I like had a presentation and like did it again. And then my friend Taylor at work, she did one this week about Mothman and other cryptids. And to support, I made a tinfoil hat. So my husband walked by the office and it's like pitch dark in here because I keep it really dark. And I have my Satanic Temple candle lit and I'm staring at the computer and I have a tinfoil hat on. So it's a great picture. It really encapsulates what's going on
A
in this
lot going on
office.
there. Yeah.
He said it to my family. He was like, I don't know.
We'll just keep this door closed for now on.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, it's a lot. I don't know how I got there. Oh, just because it's cold in here. And I bought a sweatshirt. But anyway, let's talk about the Olympics again. And this story is fucking horrible. So I apologize to literally everyone that I have to tell you this. We talked about the origins of the Olympics. We talked about ancient and the modern. Last week, we talked about Hitler's 1936 Olympics and Olympics up to 1950. So today, we're going to do Olympics from 1950 to 1980. There's some fun things, there are some bad things, and there's a very, very, very bad thing. And I've been like kind of sick to my stomach for the past couple days
I'm
learning
kind of
about it.
nervous. You're kind of setting this up the way I set up the Tote family murders. Like,
It's really fucking, honestly, most terrible thing, one of the most terrible things I've ever heard. So I watched a bunch of videos. I couldn't find like a really like the book that I wanted to read. Like I wanted a book about this and I couldn't really figure it out. I couldn't get Vengeance, which is the book that the movie Munich was based off of. It didn't come in audiobook and like I don't have time to actually like sit down and read a book with my eyes. So I listened to another book, and then a book about the 1960 Olympics, and then a bunch of videos that I'll share in the notes. Um, oh, my first thing is, okay, this has been an awful week for me. I think this might be why. I've been like depressed and sad all week, and this might very, very well be why. But let's talk about some fun things or other things that happened in the Olympics before we get to Munich in 1972. Um, every Olympics, and I'm sure I'm going to miss some of the highlights, has like really heroic, exciting things. Everything has a political undertone, which we know. I think that like the dream of Pierre Coubertin was like this will be something that transcends politics, just athletes and the beauty of sport, and it's not that, and it can never be that. It's always going to be something political happening. But a couple fun things. I'm gonna list where the Olympics were, and then some things that happened that were fun. So in the 50s, the Winter Olympics were in Oslo, Norway, and in those games, Emil Zapotec of Czechoslovakia won the gold in the 5,000 meter, 10,000 meter, and the marathon, which has never been repeated before. So he's like a runner, which is cool. Or again. Then they were in Finland, and they were in Italy. In 1956, the Summer Olympics were in Melbourne. The equestrian events were in Stockholm, Sweden, which led me to search how the fuck do the horses get to Paris? And the answer is very, very fancy planes.
Really?
And yeah, so for all of the equestrian events, like I think I mentioned this um, in the first episode on the Olympics, but they're going to be at Versailles, which is like real cool. So like in front of Versailles in like the gardens, they're making the whatever for the horses to like jump and shit. But the horses get there, through Europe, they can probably take a train, but from everywhere else, they have to take like really nice, really fancy airplanes
Once
to
again,
get there.
showing that many of these Olympic sports are just for the everyman to do.
I actually also just like my husband was sharing me a story of a man who had like taken a little boat across the Pacific, and he was like, "Oh, he did it. He got there in like 46 days." And I said, "That sounds like some rich kid shit." And he said, "It looks like his parents are rich." And I was like, "Yeah, poor people aren't doing that." Like that's the guy was like it was an interview with him, and he was like, "Yeah, dude, I was like worried." And I was like, "Ugh, I just hate that rich
You
people
can
shit."
probably get like sponsorships. I mean, I don't
Ugh.
think Greta Thunberg is like a millionaire, but like she takes like a private yacht everywhere or sailing yacht or something. She wants to do carbon neutral. So I think that she just gets sponsored by a bunch of like
Just sail everywhere.
environmental groups.
I
Yeah.
love that about her. Um, so anyway, exactly. Equestrian events for the everyday folk. In Melbourne, also, a couple countries had boycotted that due to political reasons. There was a Suez Canal crisis, and the Soviet invasion of Hungary. So things were happening in the 50s and 60s, obviously. The 60s is going to be the Cold War. The Winter Olympics in 1960 were in Squaw Valley, United States, and in the summer they were in Rome. So I read a book called 1960 Rome, the Olympics that changed the world. And like after I was done reading it, I realized that I read the abridged version and I was like, did they abridge the world changing out of it? Because I didn't really see it. Like I
Changing
didn't
out of changing out of what?
out of the book. Like I didn't see any world changing in the book. It was just like a typical Olympics. But whatever. I read the whole book and I learned a lot about the 1960 Olympics.
It's not a
Obviously,
grandiosity added to like this feat of, I don't know, it's probably one of those
eh,
things.
it's fine. Like they one thing that is fair, the USSR, they hosted the trials in 1960 and they were calling out the racism in the United States, which is absolutely fair because it was, the 1960s. Cassius Clay was there for the first time. He's obviously going to become Muhammad Ali. And as all accounts are, he was very full of himself and like very excited. Another fun story is that he screamed the entire flight there because he didn't want to do it and he was scared, which is
Wait,
fun.
you didn't, oh, you didn't want to fly. Okay.
Yeah, he didn't want to fly. It's the Cold War. I'm not going to talk about doping at all, I think, during this series, but one of the big things that happened at the very first day of the 1960 Olympics, Knud, Knud, you know, Jensen. He was I must have been from Sweden or Norway. He was competing in the 100-kilometer team trial on his bicycle, and he passed out and died, and he had traces of amphetamines in his blood. So that was like one of the it happened before, but it was like a first like really high profile thing where someone had died and potentially had done it because they were doping. And I know that like there's also like when Lance Armstrong was doing it, they were like getting new blood every day,
Oh yeah,
like really
yeah,
weird,
yeah.
like really weird shit. So that happened in 1960. Ethiopia was there, and that was a big deal because they had been invaded by Italy, but they were there in Italy for the games, and Ethiopian Abibe Bikila won the marathon with no shoes on, which is incredible because Rome is very cobbly. And he did it again in Tokyo the next year, which is super cool. Or the next time. The
Why
boxing
did
fine
Italy invade Ethiopia for?
um land,
Weird. Do
yeah,
you know that, or are you just saying that?
resources, probably. I don't know.
Weird. Okay.
I can look up later. There are the boxing finals were the US versus Italy, and the Italians were getting really rowdy, and everybody was like kind of mad. And Bing Crosby stood up and sang the Star Spangled Banner to calm everybody down, which would totally work. And I love that because he has such a beautiful voice. So I love that. And then also in 1960, there's a lovely story about a track team of Black women called the Tiger Bells. And Wilma Rudolph was the first American woman to win 3 gold medals, and she won it in track and field during 1960. So that was really fun. I feel like it was world changing, but like fun stuff happened in 1960 in Rome. 1964, they were in Tokyo. That was the first in Asia and the first televised via satellite. So that was the first time you could actually see it. Um, you know, not live, but like near live or like the same day. In 1968, it was in Mexico City, Mexico, where there were also a bunch of high altitude records were broken because Mexico City is high. I think it's also a mile high, just like Denver.
It
Did you
is.
tell me
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it's one of those things. I watch a lot of like fighting stuff, and anybody who goes to Mexico City when they have an event, like they always just
Mm.
gas out immediately. And it's like, what just happened? It's like, oh, they're in Mexico City. That's
Oh,
what
it totally
happened.
makes sense. Yeah. Um, you can talk about how Barack Obama did that shitty debate in Denver.
Was it the Mitt Romney one?
Yes.
I should. I should.
Um, so another thing that happened in 1968, the summer, was the Black Power salute. Do you remember that?
Yes, yes.
So Tommy Smith and John Carlos, they won the 200 meter. They were gold and bronze. They raised their fist in a Black Power salute. The other guy who won silver was an Australian named Peter Norman. He obviously seems he got it. He was like, I'm not going to do that because I'm a white guy, but they all wore human rights badges. He was definitely like in solidarity with them. Um, Tammy Smith said later, quote, "We were concerned about the lack of black assistant coaches, about how Muhammad Ali got stripped of his title, about the lack of access to good housing, and our kids not being able to attend the top colleges." So, it kind of brought that to the forefront, and that was a big deal as well. Into the 1970s, in 1972, the Winter Olympics were in Sapporo, Japan. In the summer, they were in Munich, which we'll talk about in length in a second. But one other fun thing that happened in Munich, nope, the only not other, a fun thing that happened in Munich in 1972 was
Nice recovery.
yeah, no, Mark Spitz was the American swimmer. He won 7 gold medals and he set world records with each one. And I just want to note that he had a mustache.
Yeah, I know Mark. I actually do know what Mark Spitz looks like.
But like, don't you feel it's funny that he had a mustache? Like, isn't
I
the
mean,
idea now to be as hairless as possible?
he probably
But it
could
was
have
the
won
70s and he
eight.
was like, I have to have a mustache. It's the
This is like
70s.
my identifying characteristic and trait. All my
If I
powers.
didn't have a,
What if his power is in the mustache?
I think it is in the mustache.
I think
I
so
think that
too.
maybe that was it. Maybe it was like pulling him forward somehow. Um, so I thought that was lovely. The 1976 Winter Olympics were relocated from Denver. Ended up being in Innsbruck, Austria. A couple years before, Denver was like, no, 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 we can't do this because it was just like too fucking expensive. And the
Yeah,
people were like,
good.
stop doing this. So they stopped, and Austria was like, we'll take it. Um, the 1976 Summer Olympics were in Montreal, Canada. Romanian gymnast Nadia Comaneci. Comenesi scored the first perfect 10 in Olympic gymnastics, and she won 3 gold medals, which is fun. And this is also where Caitlyn Jenner won the gold in the decathlon. Um,
No way.
and yes, and the decathlon is fucking insane. So read about it a little bit in the 1960 book, and just to tell you what the decathlon is, it's a 2-day event and it's a point system. So you could have like something you're really good at and something that you're not very good at. But on the day one, you do the 100 meters, the long jump, the shot put, the high jump, and the 400 meters. On day two, you do 110-meter hurdles, discus throw, pole vault, javelin throw, and 1500 meters. It's just like the 2 most exhausting days you could possibly think of.
It kind of reminds me of field day in elementary school, which is like the funnest day
Yeah, exactly. You
ever.
do. You do. I don't know. Hopefully, you get popsicles at the end of it.
Oh
Those
yeah,
are
we
like
did.
it's really fucking
Yeah.
hard. Oh no, I mean the decathletes. I know you did.
Oh,
Um, the last Olympics of like this time period, the 80s Summer Olympics were in Moscow, and several countries, including the United States, did not attend, which led the Soviet Union to win most of the medals, which makes
yeah, makes
sense
sense.
if you think
Yeah.
about it. So next week we'll talk about 1984 because there's a lot of stuff with Los Angeles in 1984 that resulted in the way that LA is policed that kind of ties sort of set the stage for like race riots of the 1990s. So we'll talk about that, and then also the Atlanta bombing. So that's where we'll end, I think, next week because it's a lot. I feel like I'm really
That's a lot.
overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed by these stories. So let's talk about Munich and what happened
Is
in
Munich the thing
1972.
that is Munich the thing you were prefacing this with?
Yes,
Okay.
this is the bad thing. This is okay. Ultimately, this is a revenge story. This is a story of revenge for all sorts of wrongs and revenge after revenge after revenge. We have not talked
It's
about
still
Israel
happening right now.
exactly. So we have not talked about Israel and Palestine because like this is a fun podcast and who cares what we think. It seems to me that anti-terrorism becomes terrorism very, very quickly. And an eye for an eye for an eye for 1,000 eyes is always going to lead to innocent people dying. And that's what this does. Innocent people are going to die all over this story. The families of the murdered athletes in 1972, they wanted the truth, they wanted justice, and they wanted help. They wanted to be compensated for their loss. There were huge,
Well, are you gonna get
huge,
into what happened though? Like
yeah,
what
yeah.
the, okay.
I'm just prefacing like what
Okay.
I want to share about like this. Like they didn't want revenge. They wanted justice. They wanted to know what happened and they wanted money because like their their husbands had been killed and it was a ton of people's fault. And they didn't get any of that. Eventually they would get a little settlement in like the 2004, I think, but they didn't get like what they deserved out of this, but they did not want revenge. They were like that will only lead to more innocent people dying, and it did. So I just wanted to like start with that. Like there was huge errors on behalf of anyone, but this is just like revenge is for revenge, and there are absolutely no winners. So the 1970s sounds fucking terrifying. There are so many terror groups around the Middle East and Europe, and they're like very, very active. There's the Red Army from Asia, there's the Baader-Meinhof from Germany, the Brotherhood, which is the predecessor to Hamas, the IRA. It's like a fucking scary time. In the 50s and the 1970s, there was a plane hijacking one every 5 days.
It's nuts.
Like, would you, what? Like, there have been zero for many, many years now.
Yeah, but that's probably not like in the US, right? Like that's
No,
probably
but all around Europe, you
yeah.
know. So in 1969, there were 86 hijackings. In 1970, there were 78. So your Idi Amin story with the hijacking is part of the like revenge part of the
Yeah,
story
yeah.
that I won't even get into, but like that kind of shit was happening all the time, which is like crazy. So there's like a lot going on, like a lot of tension in Europe and in the Middle East. Like in part of the revenge story, people are going to get shot in like cafes in Italy, like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
tons of going on. So to preface, which is like not at all doing it justice, but a lot is going on here. Yasser Arafat is the president of the PLO, which is the Palestinian Liberation Organization. He would lead a nationalist party that he founded in 1959. Their goal was to destroy Israel. They still exist, although in 1993 they said their goal was for Arab statehood for Palestine. The prime minister of Israel was a woman, which I find interesting, named Golda Meir. And in 1970 to 1971, so in like the immediate prelude to the Olympics, there was a Jordanian civil war that was led by the PLO. And this is a long story, but like Jordan's involved, Gaddafi is there, Egypt's involved, Israel's involved. Like one day they hijack a Swiss Air flight, a TWA flight, and a Pan Am flight, and they bring them all to one airstrip and blow them all up. And like, this is a really dramatic thing. No one died, no one was in the planes, but they blew them all up after the hijackings. So just like a wild time to be alive. And in September of that year, the worst of it, and that became known as Black September. And a whole bunch of stuff happened during Black September, but just remember those words together, and we'll talk about them in a second. So all of that stuff is happening, as always, in the background. But think about the Germans in 1972. They are like, everything is fucking fine. We are great. Look how fucking nice we are. So the German Olympics in Munich, they called them the Olympics of peace and joy. They were like, do you remember the last Olympics? We do not. No, no, no. They were like, everything is wonderful. Everything is fine. So because of that, and then Fars, you'll remember last time that we talked, in 1936 in the Winter Olympics, like everyone wore their like SS uniforms and people were like, that's a little much. So in the summer they were like trying not to show that they were like SS people, but they were like very clearly the SS, you know?
Yeah, of course. Can't
You
really
can't
hide that.
hide that. So in 1972, there is almost zero security. The cops and the Olympic security do not have guns. They have nothing. They wear these like powder blue suits and they're like everything's fine and there's not very many of them. So some people had the assumption that like behind the scenes there was more security and they were just hiding, but that wasn't true. There was really like almost no security at the Olympics.
It literally just dawned on me that this is Germany, like 30 years after.
It's so not that long ago,
So
you
not
know,
that
like
long ago. Yeah.
from it exactly. So yeah, it's 1972. Like, I mean, they're like barely repairing, you know, it's just
Yeah,
like
not even
crazy.
30 years ago. It's like 23, 4 years ago or something.
So there's like everything's fine. Um, so they are that is, you know, that's the mood in Germany, is that they are okay. So it's 36 years. 30, it's in 36 years since 1936.
Got it.
I just did the math because I think
Thank you
like that
for,
doesn't sound right.
I'm gonna have to cut this
Um,
out.
so um they're like everything's fine, we're fine. Every country did have their own like security team that would go beforehand and be like, everything seems fine. The Israeli security, they seemed to be more worried about the security of their press than the athletes themselves. And they seemed not concerned either. One of the coaches did go early and he said, this is not safe for our athletes. The Israeli team, the women were somewhere else, but the men's team was in an apartment on 31 Connollystraße. They were in apartments 1 through 5 in the Olympic Village. So they had 5 apartments. They were all first floor apartments, but they were 2-story um, apartments, and they housed the some wrestlers, some fencers, and a lot of coaches as well. So one thing that was if you look this up, you're going to see pictures of someone looking over a balcony. And that was confusing to me for a second because the first thing you also see is that it was a first floor apartment, which seems very, very unsafe, but they were 2-story apartments.
Got
So
it.
that's why. Um, I was confused
Yeah,
by
that
that.
is a scary picture.
Of the guy with the mask on. Yeah,
It looks like the strangers.
I know. I'll tell you what he was doing in a second. You'll be like, Jesus fucking Christ. That's what you'll say when we get there. Um, so there was no security, like I said, and the door to this part of the apartment block was always left open because it also led to the apartment garage. I'm sorry, the car garage, the parking garage. So you could always get in. Like you'd always get up to the door of the apartment. So this is terrible. It is a long operation to get the people from the PLO who are a group called Black September. That's the name that this specific terrorist cell gives themselves as Black September in relation to the war that had happened the year before. They had spent some time like faking passports and getting into the country. At one point, in one of the airports in Germany, there was a couple, and they had 5 bags, and they got pulled over by security, and security was like, "What's in your bags? Open them." And they were like, "No, we don't want to, whatever." And then they opened up he's like, "Which bag do you want to open?" And then the guy pointed to one, opened it up, and it was full of lingerie, you know? So the Germans were like kind of embarrassed, and they like closed it, and they're like, "Fine, you can go." The other 4 suitcases were full of AK-47s. So like they just were shit lucky that those weren't the ones that they saw. And that's like, and then they took the 4 suitcases, put them in lockers in the train station in Munich, and then they like went on to the next person. So it was like one thing after a thing to get the guns, to get the people there, and it all culminated on September 4th, 1972. So the athletes, who I will tell you all of their names, they were out in Munich seeing Fiddler on the Roof, which is fun. They went to a show. They saw a very famous person who played like the lead role. It was a mix of athletes and coaches. One of the doctors, that was a team doctor, his 13-year-old son had asked to stay in the Olympic Village with the athletes, and he said no, and the son was really mad, and he didn't stay there, which is like obviously saved his life, but is really just like a gross side story, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so at 4:30 a.m., 8 members of Black September scaled the fence, which was only 6 feet high,
Okay.
and got
Can I
into,
pause? Can I
yeah,
pause? How do they know? Were they trying to still? I saw the movie Munich, but I saw it like I was in college. I remember only that Steven Spielberg directed it,
yes,
and Eric Bana was in it,
they knew who they were going after. They wanted to go after the Israelis. That was the point.
and they knew they were there.
Yes. They had
Okay,
spent a lot of time like sneaking around. They didn't really have to sneak around. They could just kind of like walk in and see, and they knew exactly where they were staying. They had a set of copied keys to the room. They were like ready. They were
got
dressed in
it.
track suits, and they had all of their, excuse me, all of their stuff, like their weapons. So they specifically wanted to target the Israelis, and I'll tell you what they wanted, what their demands were. But they scaled the thing. 2 drunk Canadians helped them. Like, isn't their fault. They were like helping them get over it because it was like just imagined that everybody like, couldn't get in, and it was 4:30 in the morning. Um, they had stolen keys, and they opened the door. So one of a wrestling referee named Josef Gutfreund, he heard a noise. And you might remember this from the movie. Because of like one of the clips that I saw, I just couldn't watch it because I'm just so upset. But he heard the noise, went to the door, saw them opening it, saw men behind the door wearing like ski masks, and threw his body against the door to try to stop them from coming in. Gutfreund was 300 pounds, like a really big guy, and he was tried his best to keep them out. He d Doing that allowed enough time for his roommate, weight coach Tuvia Skakowski, to escape through a window. So he went running out to start to try to tell people what was going on, and tried to. I think he ended up at a hotel like, calling people, tried to figure out like what to do. But there was no like security patrol that could have helped him. There was like no one
Yeah,
there that should have been there. Um, Coach um, Moshe Weinberg fought them as soon as they got in. He started fighting the terrorists. They shot him in the cheek, and he lived from that shot. It was a terrible, obviously, like through it went through his face. And then he did a very brave thing that like makes me want to cry. The the terrorists asked him where the next group of Israeli athletes were, and and because they were in apartment 1. And he said, they're not in apartment 2, they're in apartment 3. And he walked them past apartment 2 to apartment 3, because apartment 3 was where the bigger guys were. That's where the wrestlers and the weightlifters were. So they think that that's what his thought was like, hopefully these guys can stop them, which is like, I don't know, it just like gives me the chills and makes me want to die.
he
Um,
got shot in the
he,
face with an AK-47.
yeah, or some sort of gun. Probably not
Okay,
that because
okay. Yeah, his
um,
head would have exploded a bit.
yeah. Um, because he was able to do that and kind of like at least the big guys in apartment 3, they were startled awake, so they weren't really ready to like help. It was very confusing. The last guy to escape was weight coach Tuvia Skakowski. Wait, he escaped. Wait, one more person escaped. Gad Tosabari, a wrestler. He got to escape as well. So 2 guys escaped. He was the last person to escape. Weinberg is going to be shot and killed almost immediately after this, after they gather everybody together in an apartment. And I think that this is the body that they show like the press and show people to be like, we're serious about this. Like we're actually killing people in here. Um, Weinberg's son, Guri, plays him in the movie Munich.
Oh wow,
He was born on August 1st, 1972, so he never met his father. His father died when he was a month old.
that's crazy.
Isn't that
That's
crazy?
sad.
It's so sad. I don't know what to do. Um, Another person that was killed in the apartments, weightlifter Yosef Romano, was so cute. He's just like cute. He's big. He has this like curly hair and these big, fun 70s um mutton chops. And he had three little girls, and he was killed trying to fight. He was on crutches because he had just hurt like a ligament in his leg during one of his like last weightlifting competitions. But he tried to fight. He ended up being his body was mutilated, he was castrated, and his body was like put at the feet of everybody else, and they had to sit next to his dead body all day long. So the people that were there, the terrorists, I think there were 8 or 9 of them. Some of them, guy who was in charge, his name was Lutif Afif, but they called him Isa. So the names are Isa, Tony, Paulo, Salah, and Abu Hala. Those are their like fake names that they used. So you saw they wore like a lot of like ski masks and face masks so that people couldn't see who were. They would kind of stand outside on the balcony with their guns and like knew that they were there, and they were trying to negotiate with the German police. What they wanted was the release of 200 Palestinian prisoners, as well as some Red Army prisoners from different jails around the world. This was going to be something that was like really hard to do. They were in a bunch of
It's like
different places, you
it's
know?
like Air Force One.
Yeah. Like, they wanted something that was like nearly impossible. They said the first deadline was like 9 a.m., but that was impossible. And they kept moving it, and they ended up being there kind of all day long. Um, the Germans fucked up so hard during this entire thing. Even though this was a huge deal, they didn't get the federal German like government to help. Bavaria didn't necessarily have to do that based on the rules. So they used like the Bavarian government and law enforcement to negotiate, but nobody was really a hostage negotiation person. Like they didn't have anyone who was actually like qualified to be doing these things. One thing that they do, and so the picture that you see on the cover of the book One Day in September, and the one that you just looked up with the person on the balcony, with the guy in the tracksuit with the mask and his gun on the balcony looking up, was because the freaking Germans on in the afternoon, they had an operation called Operation Sunshine, which was to have snipers at different places all around around the apartment to try to shoot them. But this is literally being broadcast live across the world, and they had TV in the apartment. So what that guy is looking at is he's looking at the balcony being like, "Are you guys fucking kidding me? I know there's a sniper up there. I can see him on TV."
That's the guy in the
Yeah,
hoodie or whatever it is,
yeah,
the mask.
yeah. He's
Mm,
saying like, "I know they're there. I can see them on TV." Like they didn't
yeah.
turn the TV off for any reason. So like they knew so that like a total blumber, but didn't work at all. They tried to sneak cops in with the food, but they're like, "No, we're not gonna let you do that. Like obviously they're gonna have you like drop the food and then we're gonna bring it in. Like they're not gonna like do a thing." For some reason, Walter Troger, who's the mayor of the Olympic Village, got to go in the apartment and see the hostages. And he was like, "Are you guys okay?" And he was like, "They seemed very resigned to their fate." And I'm like, "Help them. Like,
Well, help them
what is
how?
happening?" You know what I mean? Like,
What's
help
that
them.
guy supposed to do?
I don't know. Like, why was he even like allowed in there? It was just such a weird thing to have happen. Um, And meanwhile, the Olympics are going on. There will be a 36-hour break, but eventually Avery Brundage, who is the president of the IOC, asks them to continue, which I feel like makes sense.
I
Like
I don't
try to,
I don't agree with that. I think like this is a big deal. Like there's athletes like can't. I mean,
I know everybody else is already there. I mean, obviously like the rest of the Israelis went home, but like I don't know. But I think even worse than that is like while it's happening, you can see in like the news reports that like 200 yards away, there's a green area with like a fake pond where athletes are like playing ping pong and sunbathing, you know? Like life is going on even in the Olympic Village while this is happening, which is pretty
so
wild.
wild. Yeah.
So the Germans do things like we're gonna get them a helicopter. They were like, fine, we want to be taken to an airfield to be taken to an Arab country to continue these negotiations, you know? And the Germans were like, that's fine. You can definitely do that. That sounds great. So they wanted at first to get them there through the parking garage that was below, but then the guys were like, obviously you're going to try to shoot us in this parking garage. So they like ended up getting on a bus and going to a smaller airfield that had helicopters and taking those helicopters to a larger airfield. The helicopters didn't have to go very far, but they made them they were full of gas. Like they filled them up with gasoline. Like they didn't have to do that, but they did. So they were like very flammable. Keep that in mind. So there's four hostages now left alive. They're on each of the different helicopters. They are taken to, it's 10 p.m., so it's dark. They're taken to the First and Fieldbrook air base. It's a NATO air base. They're taken there in helicopters. When they get there, the Germans have a 747 that's ready to take them like wherever they want to go. 747 has cops dressed like flight attendants, but it's like very clear that they're cops. Like they don't even change their pants. They just put on like a flight attendant jacket and like try to do it. And in the middle of it, they give up. Nothing even happens, but the cops in the plane quit and like leave. So at the time the terrorists get there, Issa, the main terrorist, gets there and he goes into the plane and he's like, this plane is empty. Like, this is weird. We can tell that you all are lying to us. They also had snipers that were obviously like around the airbase, but none of them were actually snipers. They were guys who like maybe knew how to shoot a gun, but none of them were trained. None of them were snipers. They didn't know the thing to like coordinate with each other. Like there was like nothing. They were never ever going to shoot these guys. So now that they know that they're duped, it's chaos. Everyone starts shooting. So the terrorists are shooting, the Germans are shooting, and they end up throwing a grenade into one of the helicopters, blowing up half of the hostages, and the other half, Issa, the main terrorist guy, goes in and shoots them all point blank, really close, and kills them all with like the AK-47, and they all die in the helicopter. So all of the hostages died. Um, just to go through kind of who they are, again, and everyone who died in this. The During the initial break-in, Moishe Weinberg and Yosef Romano, they were both killed. Later, killed by a grenade in the helicopter. They were seated from left to right. Zev Friedman, David Berger, Yakov Springer, and Elazar Hoflin. David Berger was actually an American, and he was competing as a weightlifter for the Israeli team. He was so young. He died of smoke inhalation. He didn't even die in the grenade blast. The next day, President Nixon called his parents and said, "What can I do for you?" And they said, "Can you bring him home?" And his body was flown to America, and everybody else was flown back to Israel, which is
Wow.
so sad. Shot, the people who were shot on the other helicopter, seated from left to right, Yosef Gutfriend, Kaihat Shor, Mark Slavin, Andre Spitzer, Amit Sir Shapira. They were a wrestling referee, a shooting coach, a wrestler, a fencing coach, and a track coach. During the gunfight, a West German police officer named Anton Fliegerbauer was killed, and then five of the terrorists were killed in the fight at the Air Force Base, like in all of the chaos of the Air Force Base, including Issa, who was the leader. Um, Andre Spitzer's wife, he's a fencing coach. She is dope as shit. She's in one of those documentaries I watched, and she, speaks like seven languages, is like wildly smart, wildly on all of this, and she's the one who's going to fight for the families to have, you know, any sort of justice, to get to know anything that actually happened. They don't tell them anything. And the saddest thing I think that happened is, I mean, one of the saddest things ever is that they were live on ABC and they had said that everyone was okay, that they had gotten all of the remaining hostages out at the airfield. And that was the last thing that they said before they ended broadcast for the night, like the night before. So they said that, and some of the people celebrated, like the families across Israel and across the world were celebrating that the hostages had been let go. And some of the wives were like, I will believe it when I hear his voice. He will call me as soon as he's okay. Like that will be the first thing that he does. I know he will call me. And then in the morning, Jim McKay on ABC, he, I don't know why, this like really, this has upset me so much this week. I don't even know what to do. But In the morning, when they found out that everybody had died, Jim McKay on ABC said, "When I was a kid, my father used to say, our greatest hopes and our worst fears are seldom realized. Our fears have been realized tonight. They've now said that there were 11 hostages. Two were killed in their rooms yesterday morning. Nine were killed at the airport tonight. They're all gone." And that's how the world found out that they had all died. Right away, Israel wants to avenge them. And like I said, the families don't want that. They want compensation for the shit job everybody did, keeping them safe. They want to know what happened, and they want justice. They want to know what happened in the last hours of the lives of these guys. Um, and they will fight for decades for this. Mrs. Spitzer will end up um, a like the Bavarian government tells her that they have no information about this, that they don't know anything that happened, and she will have like some person calls her like an informant says this information is in the archives in Munich, and then so she's like on the news talking to someone about it, someone's saying that it's not true, we don't have it. She starts reading them some of the documentation that like she got sent by this person, and they're like, fine, we have it. And they had like 50 boxes of stuff that was just like talking about what had happened. That was all she wanted to know, like what had happened. um and then in the aftermath of all of this, um some of the terrorists are still in jail in Germany for a few months. They end up t being taken back to Palestine because there's a hijacked Lufthansa flight, and they want to trade the three terrorists that are in jail in Germany for the Lufthansa flight. But the Lufthansa flight only has 12 people on it, and they're all dudes, which is like very suspicious and doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So it's pretty clear that Germany was like, we don't want to deal with this anymore. Get them the fuck out of here. You know, and
So they weren't arrested.
they were.
They were arrested. Okay.
Yeah, they were in jail in Germany. Like one of them ran away. They found him like 40 minutes later. Some of them, the rest of them were
So
taken
yeah,
into
they're
custody on
being
the airfields.
extradited. They're being Germany wanted them extradited to get this whole mess out of their hands.
Yeah, and they did it through this like ruse of this like fake hijacking. They like had to do it.
Got
And
it.
they like traded Lufthansa plane for that. So they went back. Eventually though, the the thing to avenge these deaths is called Operation Wrath of God by the Israeli government. And they will go all over Europe. They will kill people who they think were like tangentially involved. They kill historians and professors who talk about this in ways that they don't like. They kill, at one point, a thing called the Lillehammer affair. They go to Lillehammer, Norway, which is like a really small town, and they think that they found one of the guys who's involved. They follow him around. They find that he works at like this small shop. He has a pregnant wife, and him and his wife seem totally normal. They go to the movies one night. They take the bus home. They're holding hands. She's very pregnant, and someone jumps out of a car and kills him, shoots him in the head. And he was totally the wrong person. He wasn't even the guy at all. And like so many things would have been like, that guy was married and had kids. Like, why would he also have this like pregnant wife there? Why wouldn't he have any security? Like all these things. Um, there are people who are like who know that they're targets, and they will like move every day and like try to do all these things. And one of the ways that they kill people, and they did it several people in the book that I read, um they would put a bomb on their telephone in their apartment. They'd go to their apartment, break in, put a bomb on their phone, and then call them like at a weird time when they knew they were home. So they'd pick up the phone and go hello, and they would know that they were there, and then they blow up their phone and kill them,
Oh,
which is wild. So a lot of like car bombs, a lot of being like mafia style shot in restaurants, shot on the street. Um, many people will die for this. And I think I think that's the end of that, which is, I mean, I think there's like a lot more to the Operation Wrath of God and like the justice and all of that, but man, it's just a tragedy of so many
yeah.
levels.
It shows like how we get to where we are and
Yeah.
why. I was talking to someone like a strategist in politics,
Hmm.
and someone who's like in the weeds on this stuff, and like, listen, like the reality is this is never gonna get solved. Like, you can't unwind the tape that's already there. Like it's just
Hmm.
there's just way too much water under that bridge. for it
Mm-hmm.
to ever get unraveled. And I don't,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And the thing is, like, how far back do you go to identify who was right and who was wrong?
Yeah.
Like, do you punish the the people, their grandparents, their great grandparents, their great great grandparents? Do you punish the Allied forces? Do you
Mm-hmm.
punish like Germany still? Like, I mean, what do you? There's no
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah. I don't
So
know. It's such a long story. It's just such a fucking sad, sad story. Like those poor men, they were just had to sit there all day, knowing that they were going to die, knowing that no one was going to help them.
this
And
guy Yosef Romano, the weightlifter, his
mm-hmm.
mom and brother apparently committed suicide after this.
Ugh, so sad.
Yeah.
It's just such a horrible way to die and a horrible, you know, and I think I guess as we'll see in like other stories, like even though it wasn't a safe space in many ways, because like it was the 70s and there was no security and all these things, like it was supposed to be a safe space. It felt like a safe
Um,
space.
Also, there's a thing around how citizens, like when average people are being punished for their government's actions, it kind of touches on some things that we talk about every now and then, which like the people aren't the government. Like
Hmm.
Iranians aren't like you talk to the average Iranian, they don't agree with any of the stuff that goes on in Iran,
Hmm.
but they can't vocalize that. They can't say that. All they can look
Hmm.
at is again, who do you punish? It was their great grandparents who ended up getting these people into office, right? And so
Hmm.
how do you punish the kids of that? So I don't
Yeah.
know. Touchy all
Yeah.
around subject,
Um,
but I'm glad you covered it because it's again, I saw the movie, but I saw it so long ago that I didn't really recall all the nuances. I forgot about the helicopter situation. Um,
yeah.
there's a lot to it.
Uh, there's also this just reminded me like really quickly, and I'm reading this. Um, so in did you ever watch Dairy Girls? It's on Netflix. It's like a show about these um sweet girls in Derry, Northern Ireland, and they talk about a lot of Northern Ireland is during the time when like the all of like there's tons of terrorism in Northern Ireland and all these like terrible things were happening and they're Catholic and then there's like the Protestants and all these things. But at the very, very end, they do a vote to decide to like move on, essentially. And it's like in the show, they show it that like there's people that they know that were like in jail for being IRA terrorists and they're going to like be forgiven because they want the country needs to move on. And it was like 71% of the people voted and they chose to move on. They're like, we need to get past this. I don't know if that like worked, but it's like that reminded me of that, you saying that.
I think that until we get to the point where, I mean, we can probably get there if we get to the point where we have to be governed by AI and AI is making our decisions.
Honestly, I was thinking like the best thing would be aliens, maybe, but I don't even know if we could agree to fight aliens together. Um, Maybe the nuclear war when we see each other again in 10,000 years when we can communicate across the world, we can be like, let's forget about it.
It says a
I don't
lot
know.
about our psyche that when you said aliens, my first thought was, I guess if like really smart beings landed here, we'd probably listen to them and they'd probably tell us to stop fighting. And your mind went to, how do we kill them?
No, 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 no. I
How do
mean,
we?
that's no, no, no. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, well, yes, I guess that's right. Like, would we work together? Because they'd probably try to kill us because we're stupid. Like, if I landed on a planet
Um,
full of idiots, I'd be like, you guys are idiots.
yeah, yeah,
And that's what this
yeah.
planet is full of. So, yeah. It just, I'm gonna do something fun after this is over. Like, I'm so excited for the Olympics and like I love all the sports stuff, but I'm just like, we can't have nice things, can we? You
It makes
pieces
you
of
feel
shit,
any. It makes you feel any better.
humans.
My episode is actually pretty fun, but given that you started this conversation by saying you don't want to hear anything about presidential debates, I don't actually think you're gonna have fun. I think you're actually gonna hate
I
this
no,
episode.
me a break. I have a master's degree in political communication. The only thing we talk about is presidential debates. So I'm ready. Tell me what color tie Bill Clinton was wearing in 1992. I would love to hear that. Um, yeah,
I don't know.
I'm sure it was
But
blue.
we'll get into it. So
Um,
we'll leave it on a
yeah.
more upbeat note, I guess.
Uh, yeah, this is
Um,
sad. It's a devastating story.
yeah, yeah. Well,
I
hopefully
have
this
some listener
Olympics will be
mail.
eventless.
I know, I hope so too. I mean, knock on wood, just like have people just fucking run and do a great job and twirl and shit and let's do it.
Rolling shit.
There's a lot of videos of Simone Biles in slow motion, and I still can't figure out what the fuck she's doing in the air. It's so amazing.
Is she competing this year? I thought she
Yeah.
retired.
No,
Okay,
she's in it. Yeah.
nice.
So I'm super excited. Yeah. Um, yeah, I have a listener mail
Okay,
from Morgan.
okay,
A bushel and a peck is from the musical Guys and Dolls, which I didn't know, but we talked about
okay.
that song. Yeah,
Yep.
very
Is
exciting.
that the mail?
Yeah. Because I told you I
Nice.
sang that song and you were like, I don't know what you're talking about. Do you remember that?
No.
You said the British measure things in bushels and pecks, and I said I sing the song
Oh,
"A
that's
bushel
right.
and a
That's right. You
peck
did.
and two
You
kisses
did.
on the neck" to my kids all the time, and you were like,
Yeah.
"That sounds insane." And Morgan was like, "That's from Guys and Dolls." So her grandma
Got
used to
it.
sing
Got
it to
it.
her too. So I didn't make that up.
That's the correlation is that you are into you actually know musicals and plays enough to have internalized some of the dialogue, but
Yeah,
not the musical itself, and I just don't know any of it.
cool. Well, thank you, Fars. Thank you, friends, for listening. Please continue to tell your friends about us. Our website is up and running. You can go there, doomtofailpod.com, to sign up for our newsletter, to buy our merch, to see all of our episodes in different places to listen, learn a little bit about us on there as well. And then if you have any questions or suggestions, we're at doomtofailpod@gmail.com. And we also had someone ask if we ever have a call out to ask people about their own doomed to fail stories. So please tell us if you have a doomed to fail thing that happened, like maybe in your family, like a weird thing that happened to like get to you all to where you are. We'd love to know.
This all started with we were going to cover some of this, then we're going to ask people to call in with their own relationship doomed to fail, like when they started dating someone who was red flaggy. Or did I think of that? Never vocalize it to you.
I don't know. We had a lot of ideas.
We have a lot of ideas. We're very smart people.
I am going to go get a drink before you go and hope for a much less horrifying week this week
It's
than I
gonna be
had
good.
last week.
It's gonna be good. Okay,
Okay,
we'll go
bye.
ahead and cut it off and